Welcome to Harlem Liberation School. We are a dynamic black nationalist and pan-Africanist organization headquartered in Harlem, dedicated to empowering black people to, in the words of Brother Malcolm X, wake up, clean up, and stand up. Our mission is to equip you with the tools and knowledge needed to resist oppression and build thriving, independent communities. Here you'll find powerful black political education, deep liberation theory, and historical insights that connect our past struggles to present-day solutions. Through many courses, engaging documentaries, and inspiring commentary, we provide actionable information designed to spark change. Join us for thought-provoking interviews with brilliant activists, educators, and institution builders as we unite to build a better future for black people worldwide. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Peace and black power. Peace and black power families. Brother I.J. Taimba from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up. You know, we try to bring to you our most relevant, informed, and dedicated and committed soldiers, and that's SOULJAHS, soldiers in the Black Liberation Movement, in the Pan-African movement. Today, or tonight rather, we are really honored and pleased to be able to bring a brother that is the director of the Center for Pan-African Studies. He's coming out of Detroit, D-Town, in the building. What up, though, for those who don't know? And he's Brother Dennis Boatwright. We're going to bring him in, and he's going to be talking about kind of the important developments going on in the Sahel region of Africa, 3 countries in particular. So let us bring our good brother in. Peace, Brother Dennis. How you be?
Peace. I'm doing fine.
Good, man. I'm glad that you were able to give us some of your time, man, this evening, because I think that what's going on in Africa right at this moment aligns perfectly with the work that you do. Let me just put up what we're talking about so people can follow us. And I'm going to get right into it. A lot of people may not know some of the background, Brother Dennis. Could you help people understand what neocolonialism is? Because I think that helps frame a lot of the discussion of what's going on right now, the response to neocolonialism.
Yes, at first, I'd just like to thank you for inviting me on the show. And it's actually a pleasure to be on the show, especially when I seen your introductions. You had some of my favorite people on there, Dr. Amos Wilson and Elambe Braff, who many people who don't know, who should know about it. So it's an honor to be on your show. And I know Amos Wilson is probably smiling up because if he had YouTube and all that during his day, he probably would have a similar platform as yours, or at least be on your channel. That's a very important question when you bring up neocolonialism. And actually, the problem with Africa is primarily caused by neocolonialism. Before I explain what neocolonialism is, viewers must know what colonialism is. And what colonialism is actually full or partial control of another country by a foreign country in order to extract economic and political gain from that country, that subjugated country. And typically in colonialism, you also have the presence of settlers. The difference between neocolonialism and colonialism is that neocolonialism is colonialism without the white settlers, and in place of the white settlers or the white faces that we typically see with like King Leopold or Cecil Rhodes, we have black faces in the place of those white administrators. So that's the only difference between neocolonialism and colonialism.
Excellent, my brother. Thank you for that context. That context is important for the rest of this discussion. Now that we know what colonialism and neocolonialism are, could you now please outline, if you could summarize the important developments recently that are going on in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso?
Actually, what's happening in Mali, uh, Burkina Faso, and Niger, exactly what other African states should have done. In particular, in 2021, Mali, under the leadership of Simi Gota, decided, he said, enough is enough. And he started getting rid of the colonial puppet leaders that were placed in position in Mali. And after he got rid of them through a coup d'etat, he eventually began to kick out French, UN, and other foreign military forces from their land. After that, he began to nationalize their national resources and their mineral mines, such as for coltan and cobalt. When he done this, and people seeing the success of it, you have Burkina Faso under the leadership of Ibrahim Traore, and he did the same thing that Mali had done. And then a year later, in 2023, Niger, under the leadership of Chiani, did the same thing, kicked out the foreign puppet rulers, the neocolonial rulers, as well as kick out foreign military armies, as well as begin to nationalize their natural resources and begin to redistribute their wealth. But after this, since there were three of them, they began to form a security bloc called the Alliance of Sahel States. So this is what happened in a rapidly in a short period of time in the Sahel region of Africa. And I just want to say, that I'm glad you bring this up, because that not too many people are talking about it, not only talking about it, but saying it with enthusiasm, because what's happening in the Alliance of Sahel State is something that people like you and I, and that we witnessed and we only dreamed of. And also, we can only imagine that, people like Dr. John Henry Clark would love to be alive so they could talk about the Alliance of Sahel States as well.
That's right, my brother. From where I sit, if you're Pan-African and Black nationalist, and this is not on your mind, and you're not talking about it, then we have to have a discussion with those individuals, because this might be one of the most important developments in recent history from a Pan-African point of view. Now, that being said, some people do have, because we do have some times in history where people began as freedom fighters, took over an oppressive government, and in the beginning they were liberatory, but then they became oppressive themselves. So my question to you, Brother Dennis, since all three of these countries seized their power by military force, should we be concerned that they might become authoritative or become dictators? What are your thoughts on that, though?
Great question. And actually, this is one of the tougher questions that I enjoy answering from some of the academic and intellectuals, because believe it or not, we have been talking about African independence, African liberation for quite some time. Now we're being tested. This is the litmus test. Are we real Pan-Africanists? Are we real revolutionary? Because we got the real deal right here. And what happens is, I'm glad you brought that up, because when I had seen what was unfolding in the Sahel region of Africa, I began to somewhat reserve my enthusiasm, because I'm, as a student of African history, I realized that there have been over 120 coups since 1960, since the so-called African independence explosion, or the Year of Africa, 120 successful coups. So I started to reserve my feelings of what happened, because I'm like, oh God, this is another coup, So, but after, I started studying and doing more research, I became optimistic and actually very excited, because usually when you're dealing with a coup, first of all, there are two types of coups. You have a progressive coup d'etat and you have a reactionary coup d'etat. Not all coups are wrong, but because of Africa has been overwhelmed by so many coups, the name coup d'etat has taken on a negative connotation in all circumstances. When you look at other people, when you look at a system like neocolonialism, when the political apparatus are controlled by outsiders, there's no other recourses other than a coup d'etat. And when you look at a coup d'etat, what happened to Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger also happened in the United States. When you look at the United States had to go through an American Revolution to upend the British control over the United States. And this has happened even, in Guinea-Bissau, through Amilcar Cabral, through Che Guevara. This is the only recourse. And when you really look at it, brother, every country except for 3 countries in Africa are neocolonized, which means that in addition to there being military foreign military presence on their land, we also know that the political apparatus is controlled by the neocolonizers. In the case of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali is France. They control the political apparatus. So no matter how hard you campaign, whether you was the right candidate or not, they were going to make sure you didn't lose the election. So my point is this: only a man in the military who have soldiers under his control can actually overturn a corrupt dictatorship or a corrupt puppet regime. And that's what Ibrahim Traore and Tiani and Gota have done. But just getting back to be more specific about this, how do you determine what is a dictatorship or authoritarianism, or how do we know whether or not Ibrahim Traore is just some run-of-the-mill warlord? What happens is, and I just give you some statistics on this, there's usually some indicators. If you want to know whether a coup d'etat was a progressive coup d'etat, you have to look at the aftermath right after the coup. And what's happened is typically when those other 120 coups that happened in 1960s, the only thing changed in the coup d'etat was the leadership. Everything that occurred in those countries, you will see that they didn't change. For example, prior to Ibrahim Traore, prior to Gota in Mali, and prior to Tiani in Niger, when they had Mohamed Bazoum in there, nothing changed after the coup. The IMF loans agreement stayed in place. The World Bank agreement stayed in place. All of these things stayed in place. There was no change. The only change, it was the face of a person, another person who felt that he should be, or they wanted him to be, in the leadership of that country. So everything normally changed. When I say that, normally, not normally, but all the time, the socioeconomic status of the people does not change. It stays the same when the coup d'etat is a reactionary form. So let's contrast this with each country in the Alliance of Sahel states. Firstly, whenever there is a coup d'etat, the approval rating of the people in power usually hover between 4 to 6% at the most. Normally 4 to 6% at the most. In our time, in the Sahel, Alliance of Sahel state, the approval rating is 85% or above for the violent, forceful transfer of power. 84%, and this is even unheard of even in democracies, whereas U.S. president or Western president, any president will be proud to have 51% approval rating. But with these 3 heads of state in the Sahel, their approval rating are 85% or above. And I say this to say, these are not statistics that I've just brought out here. If you read the last previous edition of the Foreign Affairs, which is a European conservative think tank, even they themselves said that this coup d'etat was very proper in the real deal, because no coup gets above 4 to 6% approval rating. So all of these things you have to take into account to determine or make an adjustment on whether or not these, the Traore and Assimi Gota and Chiana, are they legitimate leaders? But according to the people who live there, 85% or more of the people are in favor of that. And when we get to it, I can explain why there is so much jubilation and excitement in the Alliance of Sahel State, not just among myself, but other people who visit there.
Yes, sir, man. I want to thank you for that thorough answer, because it provides nuance and context for those who, they just follow the general news and they say, oh man, every week there's an uprising in an African country. And they may not know that there's layers to it. There's degrees of it. And there's ways that we can tell, as you said, a progressive coup from a reactionary coup. So that's very, very good that you said that. And it's a perfect segue now to, I know I'm excited. I did a whole video, man, just talking about these developments got me amped up. I can't speak for nobody else. I'm not trying to speak for nobody else. But here at Harlem Liberation School, we're excited every day. We're reading and watching new information on these developments for a number of reasons. But I guess my question for you is, why should Pan-Africans throughout the diaspora, or maybe just here in the United States, however you want to approach it, why should we be excited about the developments? Because some people think, Brother Dennis, well, that's way over there in a whole nother continent. What's that got to do with me? Type of thinking. Help us understand why this has everything to do with us.
It has everything to do with us. And I wish I had time, because I got a book that was given to me personally and privately by A. Peter Bailey, who was one of the close associates and confidants of Malcolm X. But it has a lot, dealing with why we should be happy. To be quite frank, this is the moment we have been waiting for. We have talked about this. We have glorified this. We have created Black History Month. We have created Kwanzaa for this very moment. And now we have some images out there. We have a narrative that we can be proud of and be happy about. We finally can talk about some developments amongst people in African descent that has a positive outcome, instead of us, going over figures of how many people was killed during slavery or how many times they'd assassinate our leaders. Now we have a real narrative. And I say this to say this. I was telling my wife, we had went to, like everybody else, many Black people had went to go see the movie Wakanda. And after I went to see that movie Wakanda a few years ago, I was kind of, I was excited, I was happy, but as a social scientist, I was observing the look on other people's face. I wanted to see whether or not they were just as excited as I was. And come to find out, they were very excited about this movie. But I tell people now that we have a real Wakanda that is occurring in the Sahel region of Africa. But unfortunately, you have people who are more excited about the movie than they are about the real deal. So, but one of the reasons why, and I can tie in and try to keep it simple when you got the concept of what you call an anchor nation. But Africa is always, I'll put it like this. Malcolm X said that when Africa becomes healthy, it automatically is going to positively affect everybody, whether in South America, North America, in the West Indies. I say this to say that Africa is very powerful. That's why, people have been fighting over Africa for years, because Africa is the only country that's self-reliant. It doesn't need anybody, but yet it provides 50% of Europe's electricity. In other words, Africa can turn their lights off anytime we want to. We have the power. Also, Africa, abundance of agriculture and its food. For example, we are called the bread basket of China. We feed China. Just the eastern part of Africa feed 1.3 billion people in China. So that's how important Africa is. Just imagine, we're not going to even get to the cobalt and the coltan and the lithium and uranium and, you know, the wheat and all of these good things that other countries need in order to industrialize. So what I'm saying is, if people of African descent around the world was to tap into that, it would affect us enormously in a positive way. However, you know, the thing about Africa is that many people don't know about Africa, and there's reasons why people not talking about Africa. There's reasons why there's not a lot of Harlem Liberation School programs talking about Africa, period. In fact, people are going in the opposite direction. And I tell you this, in this tie in how important is Africa, how important Africa is to us. Africa is very important to us, to the point whereas in 1978, the FBI put out Memorandum 46 that mandated the FBI to create hostility and mistrust specifically amongst African Americans in Africa, so that we would not unify. Because what is that? That is one of the most blatant anti-Pan-African legislation put out. And it is working because we have so many groups that are, even young people, it becomes fashionable to say they're Indian before they're African. I'm an Indian. I didn't come from Africa. And without saying any names, you got some prominent people promoting these ideals. And it's falling in the hand exactly what the FBI want, because just the importance of Africa. I'm going to tell you, everybody else know the importance of Africa. That's why everybody's trying to go on a honeymoon or you know, with Africa. Just give you an example. You know, last summer around July, an economic journal in Europe, peer-reviewed journal, they said that Africa is the biggest threat. No, they said Pan-Africanism. They used specifically the word Pan-Africanism. They said Pan-Africanism is the biggest threat to European hegemony, period. A month later, Anthony Blinken, the first week of September, and I was astonished at how blatant he was. During the press conference, he said that the State Department has taken measures to put pressure and be more critical of Pan-African news sources. He said this, the former Secretary of State, just in September, Anthony Blinken. And the very next day, one of the most popular Pan-African station, African Stream, was shut down from Facebook, YouTube, and other major connected channels. So this is how important Pan-Africanism is, Africa is. But the sad thing about it is people of African descent don't know the importance of Africa. And when I say Africa, I am talking, you know, about ourselves. Now, why is this so important? When you study history, we're actually in an inflection point. We got things going on in world affairs that we never thought would happen, not just with Africa. Whoever would have thought even a year ago that Canada would have 25% tariffs put on them? Who would ever known that before? Who would ever known that Russia and the United States are starting to get cozy, and both of them are, you know, who would ever thought the State Department or Vice President will be saying something terrible, you know, negative about, you know, the Ukrainian leader? So my point is, we're at an inflection point, and because we're at an inflection point, things that we're witnessing only happens 80 to 100 years. 80 to 100 years. So it's very important for people of African descent, especially Pan-Africanists, to come together and figure out how can we contribute to success of what we see manifested.
Brother, what you're saying is right and exact, and I personally am in complete agreement with. I wanted to add a few quick things, and I want to get back to Brother Dennis, who, once again, we're really happy to have on to give this type of context. I'm not one of the, and my organization is not one of those who thinks we know everything. We understand that we need teams because each individual brings an expertise, right, to the table. So it's very important that we have somebody who, this is his life's work, right, to be Pan-African studies, and I'm very happy he's here. I wanted to add this, family, for those who are skeptical, you have a right to be skeptical. You don't know what news you're getting, if it's right and exact, if it's tainted, if it's corporate. But I'm sorry, family. I'm in Harlem. People are blasting music right outside my window. One of the things that's important is that to look at the developments, right? This is not liberation on paper. If you follow the news, brother, I know at least in Burkina Faso, brother's got a tomato refinery operation going. This means that they're using the agriculture for their own interests, and they're creating an industry where they can export tomato-based products to the world. The brothers unveiled electric cars, family, that look good, look very good. This type of car you would go see and say, man, I want to cop one of those. They're building a super highway from Cote d'Ivoire, connecting Cote d'Ivoire to Burkina Faso, which isn't just about transportation, it's opening up business relations. And they're talking about working on a super speed train. I mean, they're doing a lot of on the ground things, not to mention they opened up 2 banks, a postal bank and a national bank, family. So if you're skeptical, I understand, but look at the developments. Look at what they're doing on the ground in Africa, particularly in the Sahel region. Back to our good brother Dennis. Now, you know, a lot of us, we get caught up in the fanfare. Some people watch this show and be, oh man, that's what's up. This brother was on breaking it down. Things are going on in West Africa. Then they'll go right back to what they was doing. I want to know from you, brother Dennis, what should our people here, even watching this program as we speak, be doing to support these nations, to support this movement, and maybe even to participate in these movements?
You know, what I always say when I'm asking that question, and I actually asked one of the ambassadors at the embassy that very question that you just brought up, and that is, you have to educate yourself, and you have to be able to tell people that, for example, prior to President Chiani of Niger becoming in power, Niger was one of the poorest countries in the world, even poorer than El Salvador. That's how poor it was. But since Chiani came to power and became amongst the Alliance of Sahel states, you notice that one of the things that he did, and you have to be able to tell people this, is that he took control of the mining, the uranium mines, amongst other mines in Niger. And what he did prior to that, you had France, under the previous government, they were receiving uranium for 80 cents per kilogram when the market price was $220 per kilogram, less than pennies on the dollar. But when Chiani came in power, he started doing things what Marcus Garvey would do, and that is he started selling uranium for $220 per kilogram. And just in 1 year, uranium has the fastest growing economy in the world. And off that one mineral, uranium, the country of Niger brings in $300 billion a year just from uranium. Just from the uranium that they took back from the France. we have to be able to tell stories like in Burkina Faso, which you had alluded to, tomato factories in the car. And there's something else that's phenomenal that people haven't been talking about that much. And that is a nuclear power plant is being built as we speak in Burkina Faso. And that's one of the first power plants in Africa, other than South Africa, that, you know, there was down in South Africa that the whites had and they dismantled. But he's giving Burkina Faso, Africa, his first nuclear power plant. Now, what does this nuclear power plant going to do? This nuclear power plant creates energy. And I'll tell you this, without energy or electricity, I was talking to, just for example, I was talking to the foreign minister of Senegal, the sister that was in town, and she told me there's two essential things for independence and prosperity. She said peace and security. I bring this up to say that that power plant is going to supply additional electricity to Burkinabés, the people who live in Burkina Faso, because prior to Ibrahim Traore kicking out that puppet leader, that Western backed leader, did you know that Burkina Faso, Burkinabés, they had 23%, only 23% of Burkinabés had access to electricity, only 23%. The rest of the 77% of the population was pretty much living in darkness at nighttime. And the previous administration had no problem with only 23% of the citizenship having electricity. But since that, once that nuclear power plant is completed, 94% of Burkina Faso citizens will have access to electricity, which means they can industrialize, they can build more hospitals, they can build more schools, people can charge up their phones, people can light up their house. And I can go on with the importance of electricity. So had it not been for Ibrahim Traore, for example, in Burkina Faso, only 23% of the people will have access to electricity, and 77% of them will be living in darkness, and nobody will be complaining about it. So these are stories. To answer your question, this is how we can help the Sahel. We have to tell people these stories, and I have many, not only stories, I got actual events that will just really inspire people and make them more passionate about speaking about the Alliance of Sahel State. But they have to educate themselves first on what's going on by looking at your show or going to my website, the Center for Pan-African Studies.org, where we keep updated information on developments in the Sahel region. And one thing, you know, about the Center for Pan-African Studies, we just don't give analysis. We're actually out there talking to foreign minister, ambassador, charge d'affaires, their media, ministers in the interior, so we can get direct knowledge on what's going on so that we can share with people of African descent and diaspora, especially in the United States and places like New York, Detroit, and Chicago. So that's how we can help the Alliance of Sahel State.
That is excellent advice, brother. As you're talking, I'm putting up your website for the Center for Pan-African Studies. I encourage those of you watching, if what our brother is saying resonates with you, and you like to know more, possibly like to collaborate, possibly like to donate time or money and effort, please check out the website. And also, if you want to contact him directly, his email is up there, director at Center for Pan-African Studies.org. I have a question, Brother Dennis. Now, I know that there's this economic committee on West African states, ECOWAS, and I know that supposedly it was created by African countries. That is somewhat in dispute. Many of us believe that it was a plant of France that the African countries cooperated with. But in any event, a lot of people were really shocked to see that ECOWAS suspended these three countries, supposedly for their participating in the coup d'etat. Then those three countries said, "To hell with ECOWAS," and left. right, and created the AES. Could you help people understand how ECOWAS itself is also a tool for neocolonialism?
You know what, brother? You're asking spot on questions. Yes. You know, you talking about the Economic Community of West African States, which was started in 1975. And actually, it is no different than the IMF or in the World Bank. Is actually, in reality, is an instrument of French government and colonialism. And when, just give you an example, this some of the things that ECOWAS requires its member states to do, particularly West African states. It requires them to use the franc, CFA franc, as a currency. And not only that, these countries are required to get acceptance, not just from economics, but get acceptance from France on who should be their military leader, what size it should be, when they should vote, etc. In addition to this, then one of the most shocking things about ECOWAS and dealing, which is really an organ created by France, because I'll tell you this: in 1975, all of those countries were neo-colonized. So none of them were independent. And there's no surprise that the currency of that 17-member bloc is controlled, they utilize the French currency. But one of the shocking things about the ECOWAS membership, which are Africans, is that they are required to deposit 80% or more of their national revenue into French banks. And in the response to that, the French banks get to keep all the interest. Now, what type of country, what type of leader will allow that his country to be tied into an economic system, whereas all of your revenue, 80%, at least 80% of your revenue have to be deposited in the French banks? Who would want to be a part of ECOWAS with that type of scenario? That's why it's very important that Ibrahim Traore, he's a hero. And Assimi Goto, he actually the biggest hero, because when I go to talk to the Mali officials, they always remind me that, you know, Mali, we the one that started. We was the first one to do it, and then the other two follow along. But these people should be heroes. Now, what type of leader will allow their country to be tethered to some type of a system where you're required to deposit 80% of your revenue into French banks, who in turn gets to keep all the interest of the money that you deposit in their banks? And I would like to say this: most countries, if not all of the countries need to really get away from ECOWAS. Because I say this: have any of the ECOWAS membership, do they have a nuclear power plant? Does any one of them have even Ghana, does it have a gold refinery under the ECOWAS system? No, they're not allowed, they're not permitted to have gold refineries or refineries of any kind in those countries. So who would want to be a part of ECOWAS? Who would want to be a part of? Because there's no benefits, there's no gains. There's no gains that any of those ECOWAS members, and actually including Ghana. Ghana's economy is in shambles. Nigeria kind of in shambles. But what I'm saying to this, Ghana had took the lead, and they have changed their position since then, their posture towards the Alliance of Sahel state. But then they the one that France made the phone call to the leadership in Ghana and Nigeria and told them to take a strong posture or oppose the Alliance of Sahel state. And fortunately, they cut off the electricity. Ghana had cut off the electricity, access to electricity, and cut off the access of water from Ghana and Nigeria, because, you know, the Alliance of Sahel states, unfortunately, they are what you call, they're landlocked. They don't have access to water. And now, fortunately, they're able to get, you know, water supply from Senegal under the leadership of Bassirou. He has allowed them to get water. So Ghana had tried to pressure the Alliance of Sahel State to reconsider joining, and they said no, we don't want to join, and that was the right decision, because now you got Ghana seeing like they want to join the Alliance of Sahel States.
All right, my brother has given excellent information and perspective. A lot of people can reel off facts, but the scholars that we tend to respect the most and gravitate towards are those that give context and nuance to those facts. The brother has definitely accomplished that. We are very grateful. And at this point, we want to take a quick break. We're going to come back in maybe a minute, family. We're going to put a few things up, and then we're going to have a Q&A, a short Q&A with our brother. I'll put up, some of you have asked questions in the chat, which I'll put up. And this will be your time to have a little bit more of an interactive experience with Brother Dennis Boatwright. Okay, so we're going to be back in a quick minute. We're going to put a few things up, family. Don't go anywhere, family. Stay tuned, all right? All right. And let us do it like this. Hey, you. I know you digging Harlem Liberation School. All those interviews and those mini documentaries. Stop playing. You know Harlem Liberation School is fire. So what you need to do right now, if you're watching on YouTube, is click that red subscribe button. Share the video. Add your comments and click. Welcome to Harlem Liberation School. Family, we are back. I just want to let people know a few quick announcements. As we expand the platform, we are trying to reach more of our people with Black, or might say African political education. And so we really need your help to spread the word. We have about a little over 440 videos that are up. And we really think that if somebody came into this unconscious and they went through our videos, at the end of that journey, they would be a conscious African. That's a fact. In line with that, we're also going to be offering opportunities for those of you who have small businesses and you want to expand the reach, through advertising. We're going to be offering advertising spots, opportunities to put your logo up with your information. And if you're interested in that, hit us up at harlemlschool@gmail.com. And even more importantly, if you're a soldier in this movement to liberate Black people, African people, pan-Africanists, Black nationalists, hit us up. If you are running an organization, if you're doing important intellectual or activists on the ground work, all right, please hit us up, and maybe we can collaborate, we can work together, and we can maybe have you on a broadcast to talk about the important work that you're doing. That's very important to us. Now, that said, let me bring up, there's a few questions. Hold on, good brother. I want to find, okay. Brother Ali Cologne says, what is the New Africa Stream channel name?
It's called africanstream.org. Okay. Africanstream.org. And it's you can't access it on YouTube or Facebook. They didn't took them off because they wanted the leading voices of pan-Africanism. But you go to africanstream.org and you'll be able to access that. And they have very professional, up-to-date, provocative analysis of what's going on. And you can just imagine that they give very favorable coverage of the Alliance of Sahel states. And that's that's really the big reasons why the U.S. State Department said enough is enough and cut them off, because they felt that they was telling the truth about the Alliance of Sahel state too much.
Mm-hmm. You know how that go. There's people who benefit by our ignorance. But matter of fact, Dr. Amos Wilson said the only way that white supremacy can stand is for us to be out of our minds, literally. So it all makes sense when you think about it that way. I'm gonna see if there's any more questions that were actually already posted in the chat before I ask for additional ones. Give me a second, good brother. I'm kind of scrolling through here to see what we got. Hold on one second. Okay, I don't see anymore right now. Oh, wait a minute now. I think this may be an individual that's a little bit biased in a good way. Somebody by the name of Sade Boatwright says, "Keep up the good work." My brother, would you care to explain the relation? I think I might know, but who is Sade Boatwright?
Thanks, brother, for bringing that up, because a lot of times we don't mention our queens and how important they are to our struggle. And I tell you this, had it not been for her, I wouldn't even have time to even do this interview. But Sade Boatwright is my wife, and just to give you a little background of her, we've been married 9 years, and because I'm an activist, intellectual, a pan-Africanist, oftentimes I rush out the house to go to Washington, D.C., Chicago, New York, or what have you on short notice. And my wife, she'd be having rollers still in her hair and a gown on. She'd jump in the car with me with our kids, and she doesn't complain about that. So I had to take my hat off to that. And I was actually give you another story, and sometimes I don't even think about it myself. Just recently, I was talking to A.P. LeBader. He was one of the close confidant and colleagues of Malcolm X when he was a founding member with Malcolm, an organization of Afro-American unity. Malcolm X, and Dr. John Henry Clark. But anyway, I was in there, I'm fascinated. I'm talking to A. Peter Bailey uninterrupted. So I had went to his house about 4:00 in the afternoon in Washington, D.C. just last week. And Friday, it was 7 days ago. I'm in D.C. So I end up being in there till 1:00 in the morning. My wife, she got my 3 kids with her, and she fell asleep in the back of the vehicle, in the back seat, fell asleep. So, A.P. LeBader, him and brother Asukile, was like, brother, go check on your wife. That's really what Pan-Africanism is about. So I go out there periodically, check on my wife. But I have to say this about my queen, and I tell brothers this: you can't do anything without a queen in your corner, especially a good queen. But my point is, what I just told you about her being in the car with fell asleep in the car because she had been there for hours, and I'm up there, talking to A. Peter Bailey and doing other things. I come back down to her. I'm kind of embarrassed and ashamed because I knew better. My wife sleeping in this car, and she could have been at the motel. But one thing about my wife, she didn't complain. She didn't complain, but I felt kind of bad about that. But that's Sade Boatwright. That's my wife, and she be by my side. She travel at least 180,000 miles in our car to various places as revolutionaries and Pan-Africanists. And I just take my hat off to her about her, because if you don't have her, that type of woman that understand and appreciate the work that you do, you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to have too many other distractions. But my wife don't complain about, the risks I take. She knows what happened. She always remind me, what happened to Malcolm X and, Marcus Garvey. And she understands that. She doesn't want anything to happen to me. But at the same time, she understands the risks involved in actually being married to a Pan-Africanist.
I'm not going to let you have all the fun. I'm going to join you representing Harlem Liberation School and say salute to our queen, to our sister Sade Boatwright, for holding our brother down, picking our brother up, really lifting our brother up, and helping, assisting him with the very important nation building work that he is doing. So we salute you, my sister. And who knows, we might have to have you on a broadcast, because we're doing a series called the Community Empowerment Series, where we're highlighting our sisters and the work they do. All types of sisters in all types of professions, right? So we might have to contact our brother Dennis to see if we can get his wife to come on, just like I'm going to have my queen come on. She's right here with a comment. Brenda Hilaire, that's my queen bee right there, holding me down. I want to say live that she does the same for me. And it has stuck with me when I was a knucklehead, complete knucklehead. And I'm very grateful, man. Very grateful for that. Now, Someone else asked a question, and I had the same question. I think it's Ali Cologne. Their question is, what publications or sources do you personally use, or would you recommend to stay up to date on info in the Sahel?
Really, I use African Stream, number one. I use African News is under the thing AN. I use TV 24 for South African news. And there are a lot of other ones that specifically called Mali.net. I get information from there. I get a wide range of sources. I also there's plenty up-to-date news about the Alliance of Sahel State and Africa in general. For example, We Love Africa, Izizi, and there's many other Pan-African daily TV. There are many sources of news out there, but if you go on that website, Center for Pan-African Studies.org, you will start seeing some of those things. And you know, one thing about we're witnessing a Pan-African revival right now. And it's something that, unfortunately, Amos Wilson, Francis Cress Wilson are not able to see what we're seeing now. They can only write about it. And they got a glimpse of it in 1960, but we know that those were just really almost flag independence, because no sooner the movement come in power, they killed 3 months later. Kwame Nkrumah got ousted. By Sekou Touré get ousted. So what I'm saying is we're witnessing a Pan-African revival, and it is crucial for brothers like you and I. We can't afford to be one-man shows no more. Pan-Africanism means that you unite and you connect with like-minded people in order to promote the interests of people of African descent. And if we don't do that, and one of the things, you know, Dr. John Henry Clark says, Dr. Clark says that, and he laments this in his book on Notes on the African Revolution. And he points out, he said that black people, we are the poster childs of missed opportunities. Meaning, right when the time is right, when the momentum is right, when the momentum is in our favor, we have a tendency to fumble the ball right before the end zone. And he said we've done that repeatedly. And I can use some examples. You know, when we talk about the African independence explosion, there was only 2 or 3 countries that agreed to join the African Federation. Everybody else said that they want to stay within the British, French, Portuguese, and German spheres of influence. They wanted to keep their political system. We know that we had the National Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana in 1972. What happened the third day? It blew up, and all of those intellectual activists and scholars went back to their cities with no finished product. So we can't allow what we see in the Alliance of Sahel State to be another missed opportunity, because if we don't take advantage of this, it's not going to come back again for another 80 to 100 years based upon historical cycles. So if we want a better life for our children, if we don't want our children to have to romanticize and in order to, you know, romanticize when they talk about Africa, we got a real Wakanda right now. And it needs our help. It needs everybody. It needs the continent as well as the diaspora to make sure it's accessible. Because I'm going to tell you this, brother. Yes, and I'm a soldier too. I tell you this. If we do not take advantage of this, it has shown that why are we reading Blueprint for Black Power? Why are we reading David Walker's Appeal? Why do we read The Wretched of the Earth? For fun? We read those, like Dr. Clark said. He said the primary reason for education is what? To teach the student to be a responsible manager of power. That's why we Pan-Africanists, not because it's a slick name or something like that. We're Pan-Africanists for this moment that we find ourselves in. And what's happening is the Alliance of Sahel State, as you know, brother, because I can see Pan-Africanism written all over your face, and even how enthusiastically I see your wife, like my wife, they're saying good stuff about us. They're helping us, our cause. But I'm gonna tell you this. The Alliance of Sahel States has become a litmus test. And the people that you thought was the hardcore Black nationalists and Pan-Africanists, you don't really see them no more. You seen them when we were talking about Kwanzaa. We seen them when we were talking about Black History Month and this the 100th anniversary of Malcolm X. We hear them then. But very few people are talking about Alliance of Sahel State, because when you do that, that puts you in the sphere of Pan-Africanism. And as one of my mentors, Dr. Arthur Lewis, who actually lives in Harlem with you, he's a medical doctor. He told me, when you're a Pan-Africanist, you entered the major league. You in the big leagues now when you're a Pan-Africanist. So all of this right now really is a time for deep reflection and critical analysis of our own selves, to show, are we really Pan-Africanists? Are we really pro-Black or Black nationalists, like Malcolm X said? Or are we just really people who give an analysis, who want to pop out just on Kwanzaa or Black History Month to talk about the typical people that we hear year after year? This is the time. This is our time, but it's also a time that is going to expose people or who they really are. Are you really tough? Are you really to die for what you believe in? Because Ibrahim Traore, within less than 2 years, he has, by the mercy of our creator and our ancestor, he has survived 18 major assassination attempts. Mm-hmm. Because they know if Ibrahim Traore, if they get rid of Ibrahim Traore, it's going to kill the morale of all of these young Black kids who finally see a Black man looking at the white man saying, you got pack your stuff, you have to go. You got to get out of our country. We have never seen a Black person look a European in the eye, especially a oppressor, and say, you have to go, and demand it and mean it. So there's a lot of ramifications and implications and significance of the time we find ourselves in. And this is why, lastly, brother, you and I, we're in a unique situation. We have our health, our strength. We have to step up to the plate. This is our time. This is our time. Because when we get older, I'm actually 55. And little disclosure, my wife is 34 years old, but she has a strong, she has a elders type vibe and soul about herself. But this is our time. This is what we've been waiting on. This is what we've been waiting on. And it's not going to be easy, because Pan-Africanism, based on European scholars and economists, they said that not communists, not Islam no more, not socialism, but they said Pan-Africanism is the biggest threat to white supremacy.
Yes, sir.
That's what they said. So they're going to be gunning at it. They're going to cut off African stream and all the kind of stuff. They might gun at us sometime, like they have taken me, off Facebook, 30 days or whatever it is. But, it doesn't mean anything, because one thing about it, you cannot stop Africa.
Yes, sir. We'll come to a close. I want to probably close this out, first of all, by thanking you, Brother Dennis Boatwright, encouraging people to go to the Center for Pan-African Studies, which we have the information right on your screen. We like to also, of course, recommend strongly and warmly ask that you subscribe to the channel right now while you're on it watching. The more people we have, the more we can do. I'm not going to put our brother on the spot, but it sure would be good, brother, for us to physically meet and to maybe go on some of these excursions that you've been talking about together. I want to say, family, for those watching or who will watch the later recorded version, no movement starts with the masses of the people. Just doesn't happen that way. It starts with a core group of people who get it and who are committed. And then like a circle that spirals out, slowly their influence spreads. Don't wait for 1,000 Negroes to come knock on your door talking about where's the meeting. Don't wait for 1 million people to throw money in your Cash App. Get started on the work, and get started on the work righteously, and you will attract the soul tribe you need to help you do the work, fam. But don't wait for nobody. Get started. I've been on this mission since I was 13. When it wasn't popular, when I was they trying to kick me out of schools, couldn't get jobs, stay the course, do the work, everything else will work out. You have to go forward with that faith. We have to go forward with the faith that if we do the work and we get righteous with it, what will be will be. And ultimately what will happen is the 3 words I end every broadcast with. We will win. And we got to believe it, family. It can't be a motto. You got to wake up thinking we're going to win. You got to go throughout the day thinking we're going to win. And you got to go to sleep thinking we're going to win and do your part. And that said, I want to thank Brother Dennis. Stay on. Don't hang up, Brother Dennis. I want to thank you all. I want to say peace and Black power. I want to say that Africa will be free, and we will all play our part in making that come to fruition. Thank you. Peace, family.